Hey guys and welcome back to another new What If on the channel. This is What If Naruto had the Byakugan part 1, and I've had this idea or file on my computer for a long time now. Don't know how long, probably for a year or so. How long? For a year, yeah. For about around nearly a year. Anyway, so yeah, the reason why there's a question mark by part 1 is because I don't know if you guys also want this to become a series. Yeah, I'm just trying it out as it popped into my mind, and I thought, well, it's the last day, it's the last day of the month, so why not do another new one, as that seemed to be the track record last week, and screw it, do it today, and then tomorrow or that, I do part 2 to What If Naruto was raised by the dragons, or anyway, so how did Naruto get the Byakugan? Well, it would be more kind of evolutionary way. So just how natural evolution works, where just every time a child gets born, there's a chance that, obviously genes are either turned off, turned on, or just a new gene is created. I know it's somewhat complicated than that, but that's, I think, roughly about it. And of course, Hagromo and his brother, I don't remember his name. His brother had the Byakugan, and he had the Rinnegan. Of course, both had at least his brother had the Byakugan genetics active, and the six paths. Hagromo had them deactivated, or would it be dormant? They went dormant. And of course, and then of course he had children. The Rinnegan went slightly, evolved once more into the Sharingan. And one brother and then the other had nothing, but both had the deactivated genes, the dormant genes of the Byakugan. So, years later, 1,000 or 2,000 years later, and you could say throughout, that generation, or all these generations, people could have been born with the Byakugan hack. What if one of the people born from, the either Uzumaki, Uchiha, or Senju could have just been born and had the Byakugan, and then, made the clan of the Hyuga clan so they could technically not be a direct descendant from Kaguya. It's possible, isn't it? From, just evolution, could simply go, ooh, what's this gene? Turn on, and then poof, you all of a sudden have either a third arm, however, or, the Byakugan. And so that's what Naruto would be born with, but nobody would know because he has blue eyes. He's born with naturally blue eyes. And yeah, another thing that's going to happen is, he's slightly changed, is that Iruka would decide, or at least, would somewhat decide for, or that if Naruto decides that he's going to obviously skip class and try and, do, and somewhat pull pranks, then he'd instead rob Naruto of his own free time. So if, say one day he goes, and does prank, the next day Iruka's going to go with Naruto to his home after school and then teach him on the thing he missed that day. And yeah, most of the time it was either history, mathematics, or potentially maybe science. And yeah, but two of the things that Naruto, or at least would be crucial for a shinobi, would be or at least the kind of has dojutsu clan, in which Iruka would just obviously, tell Naruto the Sharingan and Byakugan, as it was clear in, or at least, Naruto canon, that, when obviously, Sabzar mentioned Sharingan and that, Naruto kind of went, what's this Sharingan, Sharingan this, that, but Sakura, didn't. So it was clear, class did go over it, just Naruto wasn't there for it. So Iruka would obviously, start telling Naruto of both the Byakugan and the Sharingan. And of course, Naruto would also ask if it was ever possible that he could have a dojutsu of his own, and Iruka would shrug, saying that it was possible but highly unlikely. And Naruto would be slightly sad, but Naruto would ask though, how would he be able to even check if he did or not, and Iruka could simply state that you could just send chakra into your eyes. Naruto would not, but would refrain from doing it right now, as well, anyway. And the other one would be about the importance of chakra control and why it's so important to a shinobi. Of course, and Naruto would initially kind of moan about that, it's somewhat important, but by the end of it, he'd realise just kind of how important it was, and that if he really wanted to become Hokage and, do incredibly powerful jutsus, he's going to need an incredible amount of chakra control, because sure, the strong, the more chakra a powerful jutsu uses, the more potential volatile the jutsu gets. In other words, the higher the chakra, the more likely, if you screw it up or you don't have the correct control over your chakra, enough control over it, over so much of it, you could potentially kill yourself or blow your internal network up, or that, who knows. And so Naruto would of course end up asking him what type of chakra controls he could do, and Iruka would end up stating that he could always just, try and stick another leaf to his head. Naruto would ask kind of why, and he already could do one, and Iruka would say that it's actually somewhat harder due to the fact you're having to split your concentration between both leaves, but also you're trying to split your chakra, and controlling each one individually is something key for tree and water walking. Naruto would be somewhat surprised. Be surprised, and Iruka would also say that being able to obviously concentrate on two things is, more obviously important, because if you're in a fight, you want to concentrate on your surroundings and also your enemy. That's two things you have to concentrate on. But there's of course more, how much chakra do you have, and potentially, the hand signs, you could be doing them. So being able to concentrate on more than one thing is useful. And Naruto would just somewhat nod, and if we could go of course from there, and we'd tell him about tree walking and water walking, as I don't see why he would kind of keep it a secret, as even he would state that he doesn't really, or at least that, it doesn't, he could obviously, try and do it himself, but after maybe trying to stick a second leaf to his forehead just so he kind of gets slightly better chakra control before trying to do the tree walking. And though he'd also kind of state that, though it's say, even though it's called tree walking, it doesn't necessarily mean to walk up a tree, to walk up vertical surfaces. Now, to be somewhat confused, and he'd say wall, as he'd demonstrate by walking up Naruto's wall, home wall, apartment wall, and then going on top of this, onto the ceiling and walking upside down, and then standing over where he somewhat, or at least where he was, and then, cutting chakra and flipping mid-air to land. And yeah, and then you say, and then there's one after that called water walking. Now to just nod and ask if there's any more after that, and he'd kind of mull over his head and he'd go, I guess maybe like kunai bouncing, where you have to bounce a kunai just with your chakra. And then of course, you try and add another kunai on top of that. Once you can balance that, try and put one on top of that, and then so on and so forth. Naruto would kind of nod at that, and of course these would overall kind of fail, but at least Naruto did know some more core things and more kind of more important shinobi things. And yeah, yeah, that's kind of say to kind of start. Though of course Naruto would train in chakra control and that, so technically he would gain slightly bigger reserves than in canon, because training your control just increases your chakra slightly, but increases your chakra slightly. Yeah. So Naruto would have high chakra control and slightly higher reserves than canon. Besides from that, he'd still end up failing the the genin exams twice. Well, yeah, so twice, and he would complain to Iruka. The first time, it was a possibility. Naruto could have messed up. Second time, well, there's a pattern starting to form, and yeah, and Naruto would show him that he could stick like 10 or so leaves onto his head, and that he could also stick the same amount walking sideways up a tree, and even on water, and Haki would even show you could stick 10 leaves and 2 kunai and balance 2 kunai together. Though letting the leaves fall, he could stack 3 or 4, well yeah, same, 1 or 2 more, 1 more extra kunai. Yeah, and then you'd kind of walk up a tree with only one, bouncing one kunai, and yeah, Ruka would be somewhat surprised at kind of Naruto's, kind of somewhat level of chakra control, and would kind of wonder then, why couldn't he? It was clear he could, but yeah, and he'd realised that Naruto obviously he needed more chakra control, but he couldn't just tell Naruto that. And he would go, well, I'm sorry Naruto, the only thing I could say is you're gonna have to, increase your chakra control, as the only reason why is because by the amount of chakra control you've got, you should be almost at medic nin, heck, maybe even medic nin level by now, but I'm guessing your reserves are so massive that your level of chakra control is not even enough yet to do that basic. I will go and ask the Hokage-sama, as yeah, but yeah, though, yeah. Once you try that, I'll go and tell and kind of ask Hokage-sama if there's any potential other jutsu for you to maybe learn instead. Naruto would just kind of sigh, though he would somewhat nod. Though you can perform the clone jutsu, which means you have enough manipulation, you can manipulate your chakra. So, I think as it go, Naruto, why don't you try making more than one clone jutsu? One clone with the same amount of chakra. So if you can make, say, so many, and they look perfect, then like you can see as your chakra control increases, how many less clones, how much, say, less your chakra control get, or how much less chakra is required. how many less clones you can make with a lesser amount of chakra, you'd kind of somewhat say. Naruto would understand and would somewhat just Naruto, he would put his hands together and about 50, well, about nearly 1,000, maybe say like, well, yeah, because it's, very basic and that it's just an illusion, so it'd be, well, yeah, it'd probably, it would probably easily hit 1,000, if not 500, maybe even 2,000 clones, as it's just an illusionary based jutsu that during the genjutsu release doesn't work on it, because it's not a genjutsu, it's a chakra avatar that is bending light in such a way that it reflects, that you see the obviously somewhat person exactly the same. So it's pretty much a jutsu that bends light to make you see the part, in yourself. So it's a physical genjutsu, meaning it's, well, not really physical. It's still technically an illusion, but it's more a real bait. Well, yeah, it's more kind of manipulating like light itself and not your brain, as genjutsu generally does. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, of course, from there, well, yeah, also Naruto would, or at least, try, send chakra into his eyes, in his free time when he'd learn about, the Byakugan, Sharingan and that. And, yeah, and, trying so you'd see kind of, well, yeah, or at least especially once he got his chakra control, maybe, they had that, but, prior to learning what, how to use that chakra, or he was still trying to, stick a leaf to his forehead, so, yeah. Anyway, he would send chakra into his eyes, and they would, veins would bulge, and his eyes may go, lose their colour slightly, so they would go from, that bright blue to a kind of pale, very light, very light / nearly white blue, and yeah, he'd be confused, and he'd then realise he can view nearly all around his head, or at least all the way, around, down, up, a near 360 degree view, more like 355 or 358, 59 degrees of view. And yeah, it'd be shocked then, kind of, obviously say manipulating the chakra sending to the eye, you'd eventually be able to, go from, 359, 58 degree field of view to a normal field of view, but somewhat just all of a sudden, it's as black, his eyes as zoomed in, you could see the cracks in the wall and stuff like that. If his wall was painted or wallpapered or whatever, you could see the detail in the wall itself. And doing it another way would literally just have him, his eyesight return to normal, but he could see through the wall, and then kind of combining that and say 359 degrees field of view would give him a 359 degree field of view where he can see through the wall in 359 degrees, which means he could also see below him. I think, maybe. Do you guys think that's possible? Tell me in the comments down below. But if not, then no worries. Anyway, and yeah, though he would somewhat, think about bragging, or kind of bragging, he'd also realise that, as a Ruka would, of course, tell him that, people with dojutsus are, at least could, somewhat potentially, he could potentially be, kidnapped and, taken to another village and that, and yeah, he wasn't exactly thrilled about that, so he would naturally keep it quiet even from Hiruzen, not really sure to, to tell anyone. And yeah, of course it would, but yeah, the only reason why, he, and he'd wonder what his, dojutsu was, because from what he could remember, what Iruka had told him, it wasn't the Byakugan because they were pale white. And, pale like pupilless eyes that, that you could see, in 300, like in near 360 degree field of view, and also could see the person's chakra, like, network. And yeah, it wouldn't click in his head that that's what he had, and yeah, have to keep him somewhat dumbed down. Can't have, super smart Naruto after all. Anyway, I'm joking, but yeah, though it wouldn't click in his head. And even as, the time went by, he wouldn't realise he, had the Byakugan. And yeah, though he wouldn't really use it because it wasn't exactly that useful in fights. Or, he could, be able to see all his opponents around him, or he could see, through, walls and that, and where, enemy shinobi was, or, see far away. Heck, yeah. That far away distance had gotten him or at least slightly curious about potentially, archery. After all, bow and arrow, the reason why most people don't use it, or anyone really uses it, is because of the, you can't exactly, see far away, and that. And yeah, so kind of with that, he kind of ended up also secretly training in, well, not really secretly, well, semi-secretly. The only one that knew was Hiruzen and some of the Arbu. And yeah, when Hiruzen had asked Naruto why, Naruto just said that he was curious. And yeah, yeah, but Hiruzen was fine with it, and yeah. Anyway, and well, yeah, Naruto had kind of gotten quite comfortable with using the bow, and also with, kind of somewhat training his eyes, because the more you train, the more you train, the better you get. So, while 359 degrees view is going to stay like that. The eye, or at least the how far you can zoom in with your eyes, mold and chakra in such a way. Yeah, and also realise that he can control the distance, of his kind of zoomed in vision. And yeah, and so that's what you'd obviously, practice doing. That, and yeah. And just being aware of his kind of now, 359, 358 or whatever degree, field of view and everything in it. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, of course, we could ask / tell Hiruzen, and of course Hiruzen would be somewhat surprised, about the sheer amount of clones Naruto had made, and about how well Naruto's actual chakra was, as Naruto had taught Hiruzen, and Hiruzen had just told him to go train in chakra control, which Naruto had kind of somewhat grumbled about. And yeah, he didn't realise Naruto's actual chakra control was so damn good, and if Naruto had actually told him, then he potentially would have gave him a, jutsu. Yeah, of course, somewhat. Yeah. The obviously somewhat the well, yeah, there were three jutsus. Hiruzen would know he could give Naruto water, earth, or shadow clone. Lightning wasn't invented yet, as that was invented by Kakashi. Wind and fire are, they're not impossible, they're just not invented yet. No, people who have potentially tried have maybe failed, not having enough control over it, over the over the elementals when this rare, and yeah, a just rare naturally occurring element, elemental affinity. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, he was in mid of the detail. Look at that. There is three jutsus he could potentially give Naruto if it could ask. Go for three. I thought there was potentially only two. Then why don't you tell me the two? The water start. The water clone and or somewhat earth clone. Though you do know about the existence of or at least a physical clone based jutsu, right? You could blink out, you mean the shadow clone jutsu. That's a forbidden jutsu, isn't it? And here's some Mutama Chakra and go, it's forbidden to gain and jonin of a certain chakra level. Jonin, it's less kind of forbidden of like someone's rank and more just forbidden by chakra level. Though the only reason why most jonin tend to learn it is because most jonin tend to have enough chakra to do the jutsu. And yeah, done if you're right with Naruto's level of control and and so much chakra, then he could probably potentially easily make 100 or 200 shadow clones with ease. Yeah, he was lowballing it quite far, but I was estimating Naruto's high end chakra. They didn't really know just how much chakra Naruto had. Yeah. Though it would somewhat nod and he could go he was gonna go back and of course that was a much more forbidden one, which is the multi-shell clone jutsu, which will probably be the variant I give Naruto. I'll give him both, as you kind of need to know the shadow before you do the multi-shadow. Yeah, the only difference between them is the ease of creating mass amount of clones. Shell clone is good for if you want maybe 1 to 10 clones or so, as you kind of have to mentally, kind of do mathematics and divide up your chakra, whereas the multi-shell clone, you just think of a number and they come into existence. You don't have to do mental, you don't have to do kind of split your chakra up, how much shadow clones, just a low, how many shadow clones do I need, then you could just somewhat nod. And Heroism Go Plus, that would also be or at least best-ish for Naruto. Best-ish. Sure. I could teach him, water or earth, but it could, obviously elemental ninjutsu can take years to learn, and with the way Naruto is, he'd probably want to, get the basics of elemental chakra control down before he actually learns a jutsu. So he could be 20 or 30 by the time he becomes a Genin, due to his kind of that uniqueness about him. If we could just nod at that. And of course the Shadow Clone Jutsu, if he learns that first, he could then eventually one day, learn both, the water and earth based, plus also Shadow is also more useful. Anyway, so you could just somewhat nod and would ask if he should go get now, if he should go and, get Naruto and bring him here, if he was, he was like, no, I have to, I don't have a standalone jutsu scroll, as it's kind of, so, and yeah, it would take me a potential day or so, but I will go and deliver it myself. Hi, Kage-sama. Is that all Naruto? Hi. And so his third time, which 5 times the charm, would indeed be the charm this time around for Naruto, as known the Shadow and Multi-Shadow Clone Jutsu. And also, of course, the ability with transferring the memories back to the user. And yeah, though I'd say that's more of kind of an on-off ability, meaning you can decide if you want a Shadow Clone or Shadow Clone army, Multi-Shadow Clone army. Do you want, memories, do you want to receive the memories, yes or no? Somewhat no, mass amount of army, yes, say 100 or so Shadow Clone army. And yeah. And yeah, so of course this time around, whilst Naruto would still be the dead last of the academy, he would end up passing. And it would mainly only be the dead last, mainly due to his more just kind of history, maths and kind of science based knowledge in the shinobi arts. It would be, up there, potentially, rivaling somewhat Sasuke. Sure, he wouldn't be, the strongest person, but he would have the most amount of stamina, so when it came to fighting, stamina, he could do that. Plus he would also, though of course as he, also trained with bow and arrow, archery, he would also gaining strength, to the point of where it ended up asking Hiruzen if he could get a more custom made bow, as the Hiruzen would ask why, and Naruto would just show him his bow snapped in two, and Hiruzen would ask why, and Naruto would kind of go, I kind of wanted to, get more distance, so pull back, somewhat further, and it ended up snapping. Hiruzen would go, and you'd think about, getting a metal one potentially made, but no, it would be heavy. And he didn't really know. Sure, there were civilian archery based competitions and that, and so archery was a more developed, potentially civilian based sport, which obviously did mean archery, or at least the bow and arrow or bow, was more developed. So yeah, he would just tell Naruto that he may have to wait a while, but he would go and talk to some somewhat people to see what the best bow is for power, for long range. And yeah, Naruto would somewhat nod, and Hiruzen would wonder kind of how, was Naruto only doing it in a straight line, visible line, or kind of what else, wasn't sure, but yeah, that would end up, of course, with Hiruzen getting him I'm not really kind of sure what that's called, but it'd be a bow kind of designed with, somewhat a kind of harder, more, say, kind of a more kind of somewhat reluctant I can't think stretchy string, as well as having what they called, I forgot, seemingly somewhat pulley, so that, and also made out of somewhat metal, though somewhat lightweight. And yeah, and you would have it kind of somewhat custom made, and somewhat out of kind of a more, out of the somewhat the chakra conductive metal, so that could send chakra into it to reinforce the bow, thus being able to be able to pull it back more, have more force on it without it potentially him somehow snapping actual metal or denting it. And yeah, and well, yeah, he would also end up kind of also having all these kind of somewhat asking a forger to forge somewhat somewhat a weapon shop, one of the best weapon shops in Konoha, if he could potentially kind of get / make just forge metal arrows. Yeah, he'd be somewhat surprised and would ask if the Hokage was going into archery. He was going to chuck and would shake his head. No, just somewhat Naruto, which the person would kind of freeze and would be somewhat surprised. And of course, this person would also be the same person that Minto went to have his 3-pronged kunais made. So yeah, though the person would just nod, knowing that, well, yeah, kind of already, naturally knowing who Naruto's parents were. As well, yeah. Or at least who his father was. Though the person would just somewhat nod and would state that I'd be more than happy to make them. Though he would ask what about the bow, he was going to state that a forger and that that was familiar with bows and that were kind of making the best bow, but with also it being chakra conductive, so that Naruto doesn't end up snapping it. The person would just nod. And yeah, of course, from there, now Hizen would, show give Naruto the bow and also tell him where he could get the arrows, and that he can assure him that the person won't be mean to him or that, as it was also the same person that made, or at least some of the fourth Hokage's weapons. Naruto would be surprised, as of course, with Minto being, his idol, he would know of the flying Raijin, not how to use it or anything like that, but he would know that the flying Raijin was, and that the jutsu was connected, or at least, he used 3-pronged kunais that allowed him to teleport to them, which obviously the teleportation somewhat was the flying Raijin jutsu, flying thunder god. And yeah, so when he'd gotten some of the arrows, he's surprised the person would state that obviously his or at least the first kind of somewhat 200 would be somewhat free, as the Hokage paid for him. He would also tell Naruto that these are also somewhat like his bow, chakra conductive. Naruto would be somewhat surprised and would ask kind of why, as he'd say he can understand the bow, so he can reinforce it and it doesn't snap. And even the string was made out of a kind of chakra conductive thread, so that as it went into the bow, and that the thread would also be kind of the somewhat string-based thing, because you're sure if the bow doesn't break, but if the, main part of the bow doesn't break, that's good, but, we could pull it back to a point where the string could snap, so, yeah. Person would somewhat suck on and the person would just nod as it got well. Somewhat, or at least, you'd go well. That's the thing. When you become a genin and that, and your sensei teaches you elemental ninjutsu, and if your element is wind is very good for sharpening objects. And of course, having an arrow, you can make it sharper, which means it will go faster through the air, and it will have more penetrating power, and would also cut through the air better due to it being somewhat sharper. There's let's say less resistance on it, so less power for the same distance in a way. And with them being metal and that, they could, somewhat hit into the ground in that, and you could still, pull them out, and they'll be, fine unless you somehow hit something also metal. And then it comes, to a thing of which one's more powerful, the arrow with the force, with how much force you put in, or the potential metal object, and then, wind chakra into that, and then which one's, potential more powerful, does a wind enhanced arrow could get through a metal object? Maybe not. Yeah. And, plus you could also say maybe use fire, with it and make it red hot. Or at least, make it somewhat red hot, so when it goes, through the air, when it hits something, you could either set it alight, or even, somewhat potentially even mount, or maybe mount through a, object or that. And that would be surprised at that, and, you'd kind of be excited for the hours and that, though that would ask how much would it, be for, more in the future and that. And the person would tell him, and would also tell him how to keep the arrows sharp, and that mainly to keep it the front sharp, and that he should come here every maybe say month, every kind of month or that, to have the arrows potentially straightened, as of course, eventually, arrows are obviously going to potentially either bend or that. You don't know. So, just making sure they are actually straight. Less air resistance. Again, if it's bent, more air resistance, and also it's not going to go where you aim it. So, Anyway, with all of that kind of out the way, Naruto, or at least Naruto would also, of course, pass his, Genin exam this time around. Though, of course, he wouldn't bring the bow or something like that, because it was kind of useless. He's not going to be graded on that now. Can he use a bow? Maybe optional, but and anyway, of course, after passing that, he would end up getting a blue headband like Iruka, as if it wasn't for Iruka, he wouldn't he realised he probably wouldn't end up passing. And and anyway, though, he would also go to Hiruzen and somewhat, thank him for the juice, as it was, what he ended up using to pass it. That is from Chakra, and it's, and of course the next day, his interactions with Konohama and that would all go down the exact same. That was still Naruto after all, even if he could, use and bow and arrow and add the Byakugan, even though he didn't know what his Dojutsu-esque was called. And yeah, sometime doing all this after he got the metal bow and arrows, he would end up going to the same person, asking him if he could forge the same arrows, but say 10 or so, or somewhat longer. The person would ask him why somewhat a bit longer, and that would say that so he could actually pull the bow back farther. The farther he could pull, it back, the more power it could, exert on the arrow. But arrow can only be, so you can only pull back arrows so far before it kind of, somewhat can't rest and, can't somewhat aim so it and it's going all over the place. But so okay, and how many do you want of them? 10. Somewhat only wanted really 10 because, somewhat by now, he was just getting pretty far distances. Somewhat with it, with the somewhat bow and arrow and D10 extra and D10 so extra long, he'd be able to pierce obviously even farther away. Potentially. Yeah. Anyway though, yeah. Naruto would do, of course, some day after someone Naruto taught Konohamaru the sexy jutsu, and that Naruto would be sitting in class waiting for a he'd be written, he'd be sitting in class waiting to find out who he would be paired with. So with his team though, he would somewhat have obviously a crush on Sakura, so he did want to be on her team but not on Sasuke's. And of course Sakura would obviously wanted to be on Sasuke's team, and of course Iruka would end up giving him the somewhat happy and devastating news. Happy, he was on Sakura's team, or at least with Sakura. The devastating news was that he also had Sasuke. Sasuke was somewhat indifferent, though he did find it slightly annoying that he had to deal with, a fangirl. But hey, at least he had somewhat Naruto, and he knew whilst he did occasionally call him dope, he knew that, or at least, in academy, somewhat, when it came to mainly, the more civilian-esque stuff, Naruto was the dead last in that, but when it came to actual shinobi abilities, Naruto was pretty much the second, behind Sasuke in potential, shinobi abilities, and of course Sasuke respects power, so he did have some amount of respect for Naruto, and of course considered him a worthy rival. And of course, as minutes turned to hours after the hour once they'd gotten back from their break, and minutes turned to hours, and neither of the three were all that happy. Naruto was more vocal, but Sasuke and Sakura both shared somewhat his kind of annoyance with their sensei, being 3 hours late and all. Though a couple of seconds to a minute or so later, and that sensei would arrive, and after telling them that his first impressions, with Naruto obviously putting a chalk eraser board on the door and that, and, though they would end up, or at least Sasuke and Sakura would run through Naruto would go to follow and would start running, but by the time he got to the end of the door, he'd remember, wait, I could just walk up the side of the building, and would kind of And yeah, and so you'd end up kind of doing a 180, running back, opening the upper window and walking out, shutting it, and then running up the side of the building. It's a faster way, after all. And so he would, of course, beat Sasuke and Sakura to the top. Yeah, and Kakashi would be surprised that a pretty much non-official Genin yet and an academy student knew tree walking already. And yeah, though he'd remembered, or at least somewhat, he's telling him to not underestimate Naruto, and that was he may, that he is someone that is pretty easy to underestimate, and Kakashi would realise why Hiruzen had stated that the Fudokage had said that, because when he'd seen Naruto, he'd immediately thought, he couldn't be much, important. He couldn't be, that special, and yet, he just casually was, running up the side of the building like it was an everyday thing. And, yeah. Anyway, though, of course, after, Sasuke and Sakura, started to come, Sasuke would be slightly surprised as he didn't see Naruto, sort of past him, and, yeah, he'd wonder, how. But he obviously wouldn't end up asking Naruto because of, pride. And, yeah, though, from there, of course, Kakashi, they would obviously tell them what, my other introductions. The only thing I think Naruto would end up saying would, or anything else he would end up adding would potentially be, that he also somewhat, maybe, obviously, I think he stated he also liked training, I'm not sure. But he would state that he, kind of like to somewhat do archery. Because should be slightly I would be kind of surprised at that, as Hiruzen didn't mention anything about, that archery and that it could potentially be useful, but of course he'd end up realising that it would only technically be really useful if he had something like the Byakugan or of that, and ironically he did, but nobody knew. And technically not even Naruto knew he had the Byakugan. He knew he had a dojutsu, just not that it was the Byakugan. Yeah. Anyway, after some obviously their introductions, Kakashi would end up, revealing to them that they're not technically actual Genin yet. And yeah. And of course from there, the next day, and Naruto would think about bringing his, bow and arrow, somewhat archery, but would decide somewhat against it, mainly because he didn't want to kill his sensei. That would be very bad, that could be very bad. No, he didn't, would he be thrown in, jail or that, for, killing his instructor, Sure, both Sasuke and Sakura could, confirm that, his sensei did say, come at him about, or at least Naruto think maybe something like, could then, attest that, could actually say, oh, that sensei, said this, and so Naruto was technically doing what he said. And yeah. Though, so Naruto wouldn't bring it. And yeah. So when they'd arrive, Sakura would end up, Sakura would end up looking at Naruto and would, kind of somewhat make fun of him, or at least somewhat would go, so you're just lying Naruto back to make yourself look better. And Naruto would be confused and go, what do you mean, Sakura-chan? That, you didn't know that you, do archery. Sasuke would just tell her to shut up, and that why would Naruto bring it with him? He doesn't want to kill our sensei now, does he? If he's that good with it. Sakura would shut up and would kind of yeah, it was kind of an obvious thing. If Naruto was that good with archery and that, then, that could obviously be an issue and why Naruto didn't bring it. So, yeah. And Sasuke knew the second Sakura opened her mouth about that she was mainly doing it to kind of get noticed by him, and pretty much, he was doing the opposite, and eventually, he'd probably just tell her to go kill herself. Potentially. Anyway, 3 hours later, and of course Kakashi would arrive to free gaming, and very much only Sasuke didn't really look all that much. It didn't really seem, though he could tell Sasuke was mad. Sakura wasn't exactly pleased and was yelling at him. Naruto neither, though he would also see that Naruto didn't bring his burned arrow, and that he'd presume was mainly because, at least now, or at least maybe either he didn't want to either break it or that, or he was good enough that he was somewhat afraid that he could end up killing his sensei or that him. And yeah, so Kakashi obviously wasn't sure, was Naruto obviously doing it, or at least not bringing it for either that, or not obviously or just doing it like to do it as a pastime, and it wasn't training in it to be like to use as a shinobi. You would, if this if this team passed, you would ask Naruto that, and yeah, and of course, when I presume an hour later, because it was midday when it stopped, and it was around 11, I think, when it started. So yeah, so an hour later, and they would, of course, all end up passing the same way. And yeah, though I'm inclined to think, or at least say, that Naruto wouldn't, or at least wouldn't, fall for as many of the traps that, Kakashi put in and out. Yeah. Anyway, though, of course, when they dismissed the team, they would, obviously tell them to arrive, here tomorrow. They would leave, but they would ask Naruto to stay. Naruto would kind of wonder why, and yeah, he'd ask Kakashi that, why, and Kakashi would simply ask, quite simple, somewhat, why didn't you bring your archery? Did you not bring it because you didn't even want it broken or that, or was it because you potentially didn't want to, kill me if your aim's that good? Naruto ignored him and state that it was kind of a good aim, and that he could somewhat, and that he could pretty much, fight from a good distance away, and that it was quite an expensive bow and arrow, somewhat. And yeah, Kakashi got so you probably also didn't want it broken. Naruto would shrug and would go, well, it would be pretty hard to break. Kakashi would crack an eyebrow, and Naruto would simply would shrug and would say that if tomorrow, if they're just doing training, then he'd bring it, but if they're going to do mission, that he's not going to bring it, because he doesn't want to potentially either lose it or lose an arrow, and that, as the arrows were somewhat quite expensive. Kakashi would crack an eyebrow and go out, but arrows are, somewhat, cheap. Naruto would shrug and would state that these are more somewhat custom made, so they are more expensive. Kakashi just someone would think, once he was thinking of giving, the team, that partial that first mission, he could push it back a day, so he would not only go, okay, we'll do our first mission, the day after tomorrow, so tomorrow will just be, somewhat training, and bring your, bow and arrow and that. Not like that, and that, I'm going to end this part here, guys. So, of course, if you do want this to become a series or that, tell me in the comments down below. And yeah, guys, with that, hope you guys have a good day or night, depending on wherever you are and whenever you watch this, and good bye.